Let's start in the shadow of Pendle Hill, England, in the year 1612. Neighbors would turn on neighbors. A little girl would send her own mother to the gallows, and superstition would do the rest. Before Salem, before the American hysteria, England had its own witch panic. One that would end with 10 people hanging for crimes that just never existed. This is the story of the Pendle Witches, where poverty, paranoia, and a 9-year-old's testimony became the recipe for mass execution. Because nothing says Happy Halloween like 17th-century judicial murder. So let's set the scene. England, 1612. The air smells of wet wool, wood smoke, and religious tension. King James I sits on the throne. The same king who wrote a best-selling book called Demonology. A handy little manual on how to spot witches, demons, and probably your eggs. Witch hunting was practically state policy. In fact, just years earlier, Parliament passed the Witchcraft Act of 1604, making it a capital crime to consult with evil spirits. And in the isolated hills of Lancashire, people still clung to old Catholic rituals mixed with bits of folklore and folk healing. If you were poor, a woman, or knew too many herbs, congratulations, you were halfway to being burned or hanged. Pendle had 2 feuding families of cunning folk, the Demdikes and Chattoxes. Think of them as rival witch startups with bad Yelp reviews. The Demdike matriarch, old Demdike, was blind, poor, and about 80 years old. Not exactly the type to terrorize the countryside unless arthritis counts as a dark power. Her granddaughter, Alison Device, one day asked a traveling peddler for some pins. He refused. She cursed him, as one does when denied sewing supplies, and the man promptly collapsed, most likely from a stroke. But that is all it took. Within days, the rumor mill was boiling over. Neighbors began blaming every cow that died, every baby that sneezed, everything that happened in malorder on witchcraft. And soon, the local magistrate, Roger Noel, decided to investigate, because nothing says like productive use of government time, like interrogating blind grandmothers and their demonic pen pals. Noel brought in the suspects to question them, which in 1612 meant psychological pressure and sleep deprivation, if you're lucky. Both old Demdike and her rival, old Chattox, confessed to witchcraft. They talked about familiars, spirits, and pacts with the devil. But those were expected answers. When the judge already believes witches are real, denial sounds like proof of guilt. By April, the panic had spread. More than a dozen people were imprisoned in the Lancaster Castle. Men, women, and even a child. And then came the real twist. The star witness was 9-year-old Jeanette Device, Alison's own sister. She pointed to her family members one by one and said, "They are witches." Happy family reunion, right? Jeanette's testimony sealed their fates. The courts loved this idea. A pure, innocent child exposing evil. It became the prototype for using children in witch trials for decades to come. And so we come to the trial. The trial opened in August of 1612 at Lancaster Castle. There were no defense lawyers. Hearsay counted as evidence, and if you cried under questioning, congratulations, that meant you were in league with Satan. Old Demdike died in her cell before the trial even began. The rest were found guilty within 2 days. On August 20th of 1612, 10 people were executed by hanging, including Alison, her brother James, her mother Elizabeth, and several from the Chattox family. The gallows were busy that summer. You could say business was booming. So, what really happened in Pendle? Most of the accused were women, poor, elderly, or physically disabled. In a world run by men, religion, and landowners, they were easy scapegoats. If a cow died, blame a witch. If crops failed, blame a witch. If your husband mysteriously preferred your younger neighbor, definitely a witch. The trials were about more than superstition. They were about control. Control of the poor, of women, of anyone who didn't fit neatly into society's boxes. Sound familiar? Fear just changes costumes over time. In 1612, it wore a cloak and a noose. Today, it probably has Wi-Fi. The Pendle Witch Trials faded into history, but their ghosts never quite left. Pendle Hill still draws ghost hunters, historians, and tourists every Halloween. Locals still tell stories of strange lights on the moor and whisper that witches wander when the wind howls. But the real haunting is moral, not supernatural. 10 people died because fear was easier than reason, and superstition louder than truth. And a 9-year-old grew up knowing she'd condemned her own family, not by malice, but by belief. That's what makes Pendle truly chilling. Everyone involved thought they were doing the right thing. 4 centuries later, their names are carved into memorial stones, not spellbooks. If there's a lesson in Pendle's story, it's that society doesn't need devils to do evil. Just people convinced they're hunting them. So next Halloween, when you hear about witches on the moors, remember it wasn't witches who were the monsters. It was the neighbors, all along. Thank you for listening. Like, share, and subscribe for more content. Goodbye.